bookish friends, I hope you're well. Welcome back to another video, or welcome if you are new. It's time to do my monthly wrap up. I didn't do one for September, even though funnily enough it was my best reading month. I just never got round to it, and then October's kind of been a little bit all over the place. But I wanted to do my wrap up for September and October, and I read an awful lot of books in those 2 months. So I'm gonna try and do this rapid fire as quickly as I can, because I don't want to be here all night talking about books, even though it's what I love and I could easily do that. So I'm gonna start with September's books. I'm gonna go through in categories, so like I do every time, the audiobooks, ebooks and physical books. But I'm going to start each month off talking about very briefly. I had a couple of DNFs. So yeah, that's the plan. Let's get into it, and let's start with September's wrap up. So we're going to start with the 3 books that I DNF'd in the month of September. These were all part of my September TBR that I picked from my jar. So I actually I picked 6 out of the jar, and 5 of them were James Patterson's, of course, and 1 was Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. I did not read Jurassic Park. That has now gone on to, or into the TBR graveyard. And these 3 James Pattersons, I know, I can't believe I'm saying it, but these 3 James Pattersons were on my September TBR. Now I read 72 pages of The Quickie by James Patterson and Michael Ledwidge, and I just did not care. This has the cheating trope in it. Basically, it centers around a woman that has an affair, and everything goes wrong, blah de blah de blah. I didn't really care, so I DNF'd it at 72 pages in. So I've got to find somewhere to put these books now. I'm working in a very small space. Then I read 45 pages of Judge and Jury by James Patterson and Andrew Gross. This one is all about, it's some crime boss, and it's supposed to be about the trial. I didn't even get to the trial. As I said, I only read 45 pages. And that was all about them capturing him and picking the jury. Yeah, that's the word. I didn't care. I couldn't care about these characters. I couldn't care about the story. So I DNF'd at 45 pages in, because I'm learning to be a little bit more harsh. And if I'm not having fun, what is the point? There's no point. Reading is supposed to be fun, so I don't want to force myself and slog my way through any more books. And then the 3rd one is Don't Blink by James Patterson and Howard Rowan. And I read 140 pages of this one. And what was this one about? Yeah, it was something to do with a reporter, and he sees something, or it's some story, or I don't know. I just was not interested at all. So those were the 3 that I DNF'd in September. Now I'm going to quickly rapid fire go through the audiobook. So I read, I read 21 books in total for the month of September. I should have said that first. 6 of those were audiobooks. So I started out the month with one of the first audiobooks I did was Death at Morning House by Maureen Johnson, which was her new release. I enjoyed this, and I gave it 4 stars. It didn't blow me away in the same way that the Truly Devious series did. I wasn't as gripped, I wasn't as invested in the story or the characters, but I still did have a good time, and she still did have those classic kind of, you know, the mystery and the little twists were there, and it was enjoyable. So 4 stars. The next audiobook that I did was Saint by Adrian Young. So this is the prequel book to the World of the Narrow series, which is Fable, Namesake, and The Last Legacy, I think it is. So this one is all about Saint, and Saint is Fable's dad. So it's the story of him, how he came to be this, you know, renowned figure in their world, and him meeting Fable's mum. And again, I just love Adrian Young's writing. I've really enjoyed this one. I gave it 4.5 stars. The next audiobook that I listened to was Better Left Unsent by Leah Lewis. Now, I've read another one by Leah Lewis. I think it was called 8 Perfect Hours, and I really enjoyed that one. But this really fell flat for me. The main character was so annoying. I just didn't like the decisions that she was making. Basically, she was drafting all these emails and not sending them to people, and then something happens and they accidentally all get sent out to, so not only people she works with, but people in her personal life, and she then has to clean up the shit show, basically, the aftermath of what that caused. And there was a romance in it, and again, I just didn't care. I didn't really care. I did finish it, and I gave it a 2.75. Moving on. The next one, I did listen to it, but I do own the physical copy. So obviously I'm trying to get through my physical TBR as much as possible. So I've decided if I can sort of help myself along by audiobooking some of them, or maybe even doing some of them in ebook form, then why not? So this one is part of the Private series, and this one is by James Patterson and Mark Sullivan. It's The Games. This one is set in Rio de Janeiro, and it's all to do with the Olympic Games, and it's a race against time. It's action packed. I always enjoy the Private stories, and this one was another interesting one, and I gave this one 4 stars. And then the next one that I listened to, which allowed me to finish a series, this is the Dr. Dylan Reinhardt series by James Patterson and Howard Rowan, and this is the 3rd one, and this one is called Steel. I can't really tell you what it's about because it's kind of like the 3rd one, and they do pretty much kind of follow on from each other. They follow the same kind of characters. You could potentially read them all as standalones, but you would get a much better reading experience if you did them in order. And again, this was another one that was fast paced. I enjoyed it equally as I did the others. I've given all 3 of these 4 stars. So overall, an enjoyable series, and I would recommend. And then the last ebook that I listened to in the month of September is We Solve Murders by Richard Osman. I absolutely adore his writing. Love the Thursday Murder Club series, and this one just gave me all the same feelings, but for completely new characters, and I absolutely fell in love with them. I adore them, and I gave this 5 stars. We are following, what is her? I think Amy and Steve. They are, she's married to Steve's son. Steve is an ex-copper. Amy works in kind of like private security, bodyguard type situations, and she is on assignment somewhere far away, and she's looking after a famous writer, and she is a character, Rosie D'Antonio, I think her name is, and all kinds of stuff go wrong, and they end up kind of forced together, working together, and it was just phenomenal, and there were some really great characters, and I loved that this one was kind of taking us here like all over the world, and I cannot wait to read more from these characters. So yeah, that was those. Now the ebooks that I read for September, so I keep looking down because I've got a list here. We all know by now, I can't remember this off the top of my head. So the first ebook that I read for the month of September was Off to the Races by Elsie Silver. Now this was actually my first experience of Elsie Silver. No, I think I started reading it around the same time that I started Flawless, I think. And then sort of put it down and decided, no, I'm going to read some of the Chestnut Springs instead. But I finally finished it. This one is the Gold Rush Ranch series, and this is the first book in that series. And I love Elsie's writing, and it was just a lot of fun. It didn't give me the 5-star feeling the way that the Chestnut Springs series has so far, but it was still really enjoyable, and I gave this one 4 stars. Then I read Butcher and Blackbird by Bryn Weaver. I buddy read this with a friend of mine. This was so much fun. I really enjoyed it. I loved the characters. Yes, 100% I would say check trigger warnings because this is not going to be for everyone. But I had a good time and I gave it 4 stars. The next ebook that I read was Midsummer Mysteries by Agatha Christie. This was my first experience of Agatha Christie. These are kind of like a collection of short stories, and they follow a couple of her different characters that I'm presuming she's obviously written whole different series on. So Poirot, Miss Marple, and there was another gentleman, I can't remember his name, but I enjoyed it. I gave it 3.5 stars. Then I read Summer at Forget-Me-Not Cottage by Helen Rolfe. This is book 2 in the Little Woodville Village series. I didn't enjoy this one as much as I enjoyed the first one, but it was still a good time. It was a nice little palate cleanser. We're dealing a lot with grief in this story, and I did shed a couple of tears here and there, and it was nice. It was 3 stars for me. Then I read Something Wicked by Gretchen Rue. Again, this is the first book in a Like I Need to Start Any More series, but hey ho, this is what happens. Something Wicked by Gretchen Rue. I enjoyed this one. Again, we were dealing with grief in this one. Our main character, I can't remember her name, she moves back to the town where her grandma or her aunt lived. I think it's her aunt. And she takes over her aunt's shop and she moves into her house because she's just passed away. But her aunt was a witch and she's now coming into her powers, and there's an old love interest from her teenage years. He shows up, and then there's a whole kind of mystery and romance subplot going on, and I had a good time. I gave it 3.75. Intrigued enough to continue and read the next one. Then I read the 3rd book in the Lake District series by Jessica Redland, and this one was The Best Is Yet to Come. Loved it. Really enjoy this series. I enjoy these characters. I like Jessica Redland's writing, and I gave this one 4 stars. Then I read The Antique Hunter's Guide to Murder by C.L. Miller. This was a debut novel, and it was good. It was okay. It was enjoyable. It's kind of like cozy mystery, but it didn't blow me away, and I was just kind of, I wanted to know what happened or what had happened, but I was just trying to kind of get to the end. So I gave that one 3 stars. And then the last ebook that I read for September, but I also own this in physical form, was The Pumpkin Spice Cafe by Laurie Gilmore. Again, this is everywhere. I know everyone's been reading it and there's been a lot of mixed reviews, and I can understand why. This was enjoyable. It wasn't amazing. It was kind of a nice little palate cleanser. Did it give me Gilmore Girl vibes? Yes, but not fully. So I gave this one 3.5 stars. I don't know if I am going to continue. I haven't quite decided yet, but yeah, that's that. And then finally, the physical books that I read for the month of September. The first one, which was part of the 6 books that I chose for my September TBR. No, sorry, that's a lie. This one wasn't. This one was left over, I think, from my summer TBR. And I'd already started it at the end of August and just finished it off in the beginning of September. This one is Invisible by James Patterson and David Ellis. This one, I enjoyed this one and I gave this one 4.5 stars. It was gripping, the characters were interesting, the storyline had me hooked. There is a serial killer on the loose, hiding their tracks very, very well, and it's actually an analyst. She's some kind of FBI analyst or something, and she doesn't work in the field, but she's the one that has realised what is happening, and she's got to try and convince people to believe her and give her give the resources to look into it, basically. I really enjoyed it. There's a second one called Unsolved that I really want to get to next. So yeah, this one was a good one. The next one, this was the last James Patterson book that was on my September TBR. First Case. This one is by James Patterson and Chris Tebbets. This one I gave 3 stars. It was okay. She is kicked off of her graduate course at MIT, and the FBI picks her up, and she's training to be basically she's like a hacker. And yeah, she's quite young, obviously, and it was fine. It was just okay. So yeah, that was that one. I was glad to be done with that. Then this one was part of my autumn TBR, and this is Shirley Jackson's We've Always Lived in a Castle. This was my first experience of Shirley Jackson. I did enjoy it. It was strange. It's kind of, it's really hard to describe, and I'm not going to get into it because I've still got a ton of books to go through. I gave this one 3 stars. I'm glad I read it. And I do still want to read Her Haunting of Hill House. But it wasn't amazing to me. It was just a bit creepy, and half the time I was a bit like, huh? But anyway, done. Then I read The House at the Edge of Magic by Amy Sparks. This is book 1 in this 4-book series, and I didn't expect to enjoy this as much as I did, but I absolutely did, and I gave this one 4 stars. I then went on to read the second one, which was The Tower at the End of Time. We follow a crazy bunch of characters in this series in a magical house that travels around. There's a wizard, there's witches, there's trolls, there's a dish and a spoon. Like, it's just really good, and I would highly recommend this series. I then took a little break and read this book I chose for myself. I think this is one of these 26 books for self-destruct, and that's from this is from that list. And this was Gallery of the Dead by Chris Carter. This was a bit of a chonker. This was good. This is my first Chris Carter book. I would definitely read more. This is part of the Robert Hunter series. I didn't realise that this is, I don't know, book 8 or something. I can't remember, but it's not the first book in the series, basically. But I get the feeling that you could potentially read these as standalones anyway. And I gave this one 4 stars. And then lastly, I read The Bookshop at the Back of Beyond, just to finish off. These are the I own in physical form. There was a fourth one I didn't realise, but I also gave this one, I think I gave this one 4 stars as well. So those are all the books that I read for the month of September. So that was a really solid reading month for me. I'm really, really proud of that. October, I was slumping a lot, but somehow I still managed to read 17 books. Now, when I slump, I usually revert to listening to more audiobooks and reading more ebooks, because I can't be bothered to pick up a physical book, or I just, yeah, anyway. So for the month of October, I did DNF one book, and that was Like a Charm by Kerry Bartlett. I think I read like 32 pages and I was just bored. I did not care one little bit. She's a witch, she has to go home, her aunt is sick, but I just didn't like her. I didn't like the main character, so I was like, I'm not going to slog through this. So that was one of the, I did film a TBR video for October and I didn't end up using it. And my daughter picked 6 books in that originally. That was one of those 6 books, so I DNF'd that. Then moving on, I managed to get through 6 audiobooks for the month of October. The first one that I did was Autumn Chills by Agatha Christie. So obviously I'd done the summer one. I wanted to get into kind of the autumn vibes, so I thought I would give this one a go. And again, enjoyed it. And I gave that one 3.5 stars. Then I listened to another one from the Private series. This is the next one by James Patterson and Ashwin Sanji. And this is Private Delhi. I enjoyed this, but not as much as some of the other private books that I've read, and I gave this one 3 stars. There's a serial killer on the loose in Delhi, and Jack Morgan, who owns the whole of Private, which is like they're a private security investigation type service, and he's built it up and they're all over the world. So him and the team from Private Delhi are on the case trying to solve the serial killer and other bits and bobs that are going on. This one I will say was very political as well. A lot of these do end up being quite political, won't lie. The next one that I listened to was the next in the series after that, which is Private Princess by James Patterson and Rhys Jones. This one was set back in England, in London, partly in Wales, I think we were. And this one is actually the royal princess hires Jack Morgan and Private to help find a friend of hers. I enjoyed this one and I gave this one 4 stars. I do like the ones that are set in London. Obviously, I live in the city of London, so it's always nice when books are set where I live. Then I continued and I did the next one in the series, which is Private Moscow, which is by James Patterson and Adam Hamdy. Again, Jack Morgan goes to Moscow. Something happens in the States to a friend of his and it ends up taking him to Moscow, to his team there. Again, this one is very political, lots of secrets, but thoroughly enjoyed it. And I gave that one 4 stars. The next audiobook that I listened to for the month of October was Love Story by Lindsay Kelk. This was my first Lindsay Kelk book, and I really had a good time. I gave this one 4.5 stars. I loved the kind of bookish, there was a lot of bookish talk. We're following our main character, Sophie, and she's a school teacher. Her parents are very big in the literary world. Her mum's a critic, her dad's some kind of agent or something, and she has actually written a book. used a pseudonym, but the book has gone viral and everyone like absolutely loves this book. And like her godfather's her agent, her brother is her agent, her godfather is her like publicist, and we basically follow her trying to hide it from her family. This was a lot of fun. There was a romance in it as well. I enjoyed the romance, but there were just parts of it where she really annoyed me, the main character, and then other times, right at the beginning, I just didn't feel connected to them as a couple. I just felt like, no, surely this is not it, this is not going to work. But by the end, I was very invested and I had a good time, so I gave it 4.5 stars. And then the last audiobook that I got through in the month of October was, again, starting a new series, The Luminaries by Susan Dennard, and I enjoyed this one. I kind of went in a bit blind. I didn't really know what it was about, and I enjoyed it. I gave it 3 stars, intrigued enough that I want to read the next one. So that's that. And then I managed 4 ebooks in the month of October. So the first one I read was Leather and Lark by Brid Weaver. Really enjoyed this. I think I slightly preferred Lark and Lachlan more than Rowan and Sloane, but I gave this one 4 stars as well. Again, I would say make sure you check your trigger warnings. This series is definitely not for everyone, but I had a good time. Then I read Strange Sally Diamond by Liz Nugent, or Nugent. I'm not sure how she says her name, I'm very sorry. Really enjoyed this one. This one was odd. It's set in Ireland and we are basically following Sally Diamond. Her dad passes away and he has made jokes in the past. It's just her and her dad. He's made jokes to her that when he dies, just put him out with the rubbish, and they burn their rubbish in an incinerator in the garden. They live in, obviously, like a little bit further out. They've got farmland, blah blah blah. So that's what she does. She puts him out and she tries to incinerate him. And the rep in this is very much there's a lot of trauma from her past, mental health issues, disability kind of rep. And I had no idea where this story was going, but I was fascinated pretty much the whole time, and I gave it 4.5 stars. Didn't quite give me a 5-star feeling, but I did really enjoy it, and I would like to read more of her books. Then I read The Lighthouse at World's End by Amy Sparks. This was to finish off the House at the Edge of Magic series, and I loved this book. It was my favourite in the series. It was such a good way to round out the series, and I gave it 5 stars. If you've got slightly, younger children, I'd say going into maybe like 11, 12, I would, or if you're a big kid like me, I would highly recommend this series. Fantastic. And then the last ebook that I did was, again, starting another series, was The Midnight Man by Caroline Mitchell. I enjoyed this one, gave it 3 stars, intrigued enough that I would like to read, I think there's another 2, I would like to read the next 2. And then I actually managed to read 7 physical books, which I'm really pleased with. The reason I've managed that is because for the last week of the month of October, I have been on holiday. So that's the only reason that I've managed to read so many physical books. But the first physical book that I read was The Hatmakers by Tamsin Merchant. Again, I think this was off of my autumn TBR. I really enjoyed this, and I gave it a 4.5 stars. And I am really excited to read the next one in the series. Again, if you've got middle grade kids in your life or you're a big kid, highly recommend. The next physical book I managed to get through was Powerless by Elsie Silver. This is the 3rd book in the Chestnut Spring series. This is Jasper and Sloane's story. Loved it, 5 stars. So far, I've given all 3 5 stars so far. I still think that Willa and Cade are my favourite. But I did really, really enjoy this one as well. So there's that one. And then I read the last 2 books in the Evelyn Jones series. So I read The Bewitching of Evelyn Jones and The Vanishing of Evelyn Jones. This one I gave 3.5, same as the first one. And this one I gave 4 stars. This one was my favourite in the series. Cute little spooky season time reads. Again, would highly recommend. Then I did my reread of The Ex-Hex by Erin Sterling. Absolutely loved it again, 5 stars. In order for me to read The Kiss Curse by Erin Sterling, which was one of my 6 books that I wanted to finish by the end of the year. At first, I wasn't enjoying this as much as The Ex-Hex. But once we got into the actual, more into the plot and more into them as, you know, coming together and them as a couple, I just devoured it and I loved it. Unpopular opinion, but I gave it 5 stars as well. And then the last physical book that I managed to read in the month of October was Mina and the Undead by Amy McCarr. Again, starting another series. This gave me all the 90s vibes, all the spooky season vibes, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Didn't give me a 5-star feeling, didn't blow me away, but I gave it 4 stars and I'm looking forward to reading the rest of the series. Whew. Well, that's all the books that I read for October. So that's September and October done. I'm now back on track. You will have already seen my November TBR video. Hopefully I've got a couple of more videos lined up. I'm going to try and get back to filming a little bit more regularly. And hopefully I can have another solid month in November. Yeah, and that is it from me. Thank you so much if you've made it to the end of this video. I appreciate you so much for being here. And I will see you in whatever comes next.